so welcome back to my channel. I am Jason, and this is From Sin's Perspective Reviews. I am back with my recap of Bridgerton Season 1, Episode 2, Shock and Delight. Okay, so we find out a lot about Simon and his past and why he's so against marriage. So the scene, it opens with this very difficult labor. Lady Duchess Hastings, Simon's mother, she's in labor actually with Simon, and his father would normally wear, they're normally outside. They don't actually go into the room during labor and birth, during this time in history. So it was Lord Hastings and the other servants, and he is just focused on this son, having this son, and and I understand that a lot of men from that time, that was their main focus, right? Just that was the most important thing in the world, is having a son to carry on the name, to pass down titles to, and the whole thing. But it seemed like it was just, it was a lot. His attitude, his lack of compassion for his wife and what she was going through. His main focus, all he cared about was if it was a boy or a girl. And so Lady Danbury showed, and she was trying to figure out, okay, you can hear this woman screaming, like she was suffering, okay, during this labor. And Lady Danbury showed up, and she was basically trying to figure out why he was outside and not in there trying to comfort his wife as best she could. And so before she can finish what she was saying, he busted into the room to find out, what was going on. Is it a boy? Is it a boy? Now, this woman is in bed screaming. She got the attendants trying to help her, and all he's focused on, is it a boy? Is it a boy? Is it a boy? And she finally gives birth, and obviously we know it's Simon. And so, of course, she wanted to hold her child, but the servant took the child and gave the child to Lord Hastings, which I thought, okay, this woman just went through all this labor, and she couldn't be the first person to hold her own child. And so Lord Hastings takes the child out into the hallway, and he was so excited and proud that it's a son, it's a boy. And while his wife is still in there practically suffering, it was Lady Danbury that went in and sat by her side. And it was so sad because Lady Hastings she was so proud that she was able to give him this son. And it was just this, oh my God, I got so hot under my collar a couple of times throughout this episode. And Lady Danbury is just, trying to comfort her the best she could. And unfortunately, the bleeding was too bad, and she actually passed away shortly after giving birth. And Lady Danbury was so disgusted and so angry. Now, Lady Danbury and Simon, they're not related, but she was Duchess Hastings' best friend. And so that is pretty much her attachment to Simon. And so we flash to current day, and he was actually standing. He was in the house, and he was standing in the room that's covered everything with sheets. And the servant asked if he wanted them to make the room up for the night. And he didn't. He had no intentions of sleeping there. So we go flash to the Queen, and she's reading, she's being bathed, and one of the servants walk in with Mrs. Whistledown's article. And of course, it was all ablaze about, the party with Daphne and Simon, and the whole thing. So it's the talk of the town at this point. This rake who was this woman who's able to tame and subdue this guy that everybody knew was a philanderer and a playboy, and it's big news. It's big news. So later that day, you see Simon, and he had company, and he was getting dressed because he had to meet Daphne, and so Daphne, they're, all out, and people are talking, obviously the side conversations and the whole thing. And Daphne and Simon are kind of negotiating you know, how they're going to move forward. So Daphne wanted to do like 8 balls and a picnic or something like that. And he was like 8. He was like, the whole point is for this to be a charade. So his whole thing was, the more we're seeing together, the more people are going to push for you and I to head to the altar, as opposed to the plan, which was to make you more desirable so that you will have your pick of other suitors. And so he felt like, you know, 8 balls, that is, you know, it's a lot. He's like, he want them to be seen just enough for her to get what she want accomplished, and for him to not have to, you know, go any further into the situation than he has to. And so they agreed on, I guess they came to agreement on 6 balls, right? 6 balls for the season. And then she said, you have to send flowers. And he was like, flowers? She was like, yes, very expensive flowers. She was like, if you were properly courting me, you would send flowers. And then he made this crass comment about, if I was really courting you, I would be, you know, we would spend 5 minutes in the drawing room or something. And he could tell that it was crass, and he immediately apologized. But, you know, it seemed like at that point she was doing a little too much, and he kind of got frustrated, but he kind of pulled back. And I'm glad that he realized that he had overstepped, and he apologized. So, at the Featherington's house, they're all in the drawing room, and Penelope, Prudence, and Philippa, they're sitting around and they're talking about something. And then, they talked about Marina's pregnancy. And of course, I guess Lady Portia was kind of shocked that they even knew about it. But, you know, people talk around the house. And they, it was Penelope, I believe, that said, well, why did you have to send her away? And Lady Portia said, because it's catching. And so obviously at this point, it doesn't seem like, you know, parents don't, mothers really didn't have the talk with their daughters the way they should have. I mean, even now, you know, so it's not really necessarily something that happens way back when. Even now, you have young girls who are not being educated on their bodies and reproductive system and the whole thing. So I would like to blame it on the times, but it's still an issue even today that, you know, parents find it difficult to have those type of discussions. And so when she said that it was catching, they're all sitting like how is it catching? Well, like, how do you catch a pregnancy, right? So now, you know, craziness, right? So now Penelope and Eloise, they're walking and talking, and Eloise is talking about one of their maids is pregnant. And what was interesting is that during this time, when she told Eloise that the maid was pregnant, Eloise immediately thought, okay, well, she's married. And so Penelope had to say, well, she's unmarried. And Eloise's question was, how can you be pregnant and unmarried? Because in her mind, they're linked. Like, you can't get pregnant without being married. Like, it's like this physical impediment that prevents you from getting pregnant without first being married. That was her logic and her reason, right? And of course, that's the reason of that day because, you know, it was taboo to be an unwed mother. I mean, it's, as much as people would like to say it's accepted today, as much as it happens, it's still frowned upon even today. So you can imagine how things were back then. But the fact that she linked marriage and pregnancy like it was something that you can't have without the other, it also speaks to the lack of education and the lack of conversations that parents had with their children. And so Penelope was like, well, I'm not really sure how it happened. And so now Penelope is on, excuse me, this, she's putting on her Sherlock Holmes hat because she needs to find out how this is all a thing. Okay, so back at the Bridgerton's house, they're all in the drawing room and they're talking, and you know, it's a lot of questions that they're talking about. They're reading Lady Whistledown's paper, and just question after question after question. You can kind of tell that Daphne was kind of getting annoyed. Eloise walks in, and she says, "How does a lady become pregnant? pregnant with child, or something to that effect. And of course, her mother was like, what are you talking about? Why would you ask such a thing? I guess a quite normal reaction, because again, that still happens, so we can't really blame them too much for that, because yeah, like I said, that's timeless. Parents, I guess that's a reaction that parents have. And so the mom basically shut the conversation down, was like, that's not an appropriate conversation, and just basically told her that she needed to stop talking about it. And so she went over to sit by her brothers. I believe it was Colin and Benedict. And was it Colin that said, have you never seen farm animals? And I think Benedict smacked him on the back of his head, like, we're not going to have that conversation today. And so it was kind of a chuckle the way they kind of handled that situation. So the maid walked in and she said that Humboldt is coming, and Humboldt is basically I guess one of the footmen, and he's telling her that suitors are showing, will be coming by, or doing what they do to vie for Daphne's hand in marriage. And the mom was kind of confused, because the only person that knows about this charade is Daphne and Simon. And so she's excited, like, okay, I'm going to have these other options. At this point, she's like, any option is better than Lord Berbrooke. So, unfortunately, Anthony and Berbrooke show up at the house. And there is a line down the street of horse and carriages and everything, and guys going in with flowers, and the house is... Anthony is pissed. He's practically damn near knocking men down the stairs just to get by them so he can get to the drawing room to find out what is going on. You get to the drawing room and it's wall-to-wall men, wall-to-wall flowers and gifts, and it was a scene. And so, of course, Berbrooke arrived, and he is just beside himself, because he has been promised Daphne by Anthony. And so Anthony basically cleared the house. He tossed everybody out, including Berbrooke. Well, he didn't want Berbrooke to make a scene, so he basically told him, I'm going to handle it, but you can't, don't get involved. And the next thing you know, the house was completely empty. And he's like, what is going on here? And Lady Violet was like, why would you interrupt? What's the problem? Why would you ask everyone to leave? And this is when she finds out that Anthony tells her that she's already engaged, and she was like, what are you talking about? Oh no, first she was excited because she thought that Simon had proposed to Daphne, which is what her heart's desire, that's what she really wants. And Daphne was like, no, she ended up telling her mom, no, he promised me to Lord Berbrooke. And her mother was so disgusted. She was like, how could you promise? How could you do that? And then she said something about his eye. It was disgusting as well. When Daphne punched him in his face for making, inappropriate advances towards her. And the mom wasn't happy. She was not happy. But at the end of the day, Anthony was not going to be deterred. He told her that the contracts will be drawn up and that she's going to marry Berbrooke. He was just not trying to hear anything to the contrary. In his mind, he had decided that Berbrooke was the perfect guy for her. And that was that. And so, of course, now she's concerned. And the mom was like, you know what? Just, don't worry. Relax. Maybe if we get Simon involved, he will be more inclined to listen to a man. Because obviously this time, what do you mean? You're just an accessory. You're just there to look pretty and to have kids. You're not actually there to have an opinion. I mean, hello. So they thought that it would come better from if it came from another guy, Anthony would be more inclined to listen. So Simon, he's actually in the ring. I didn't catch the guy's name. I don't even know if it flashed on the screen. I should have tried to look it up. But he was having a sparring match with one of his friends. And he was getting his butt kicked, to be honest. And, they're talking. And his friend asked him about dancing with Bridgerton, Daphne, and how that all went. And next Anthony shows up. And he gets in the ring with him. And they start talking. And he basically asked Simon to stay away from his sister, that, you know, your intentions are not good, that you actually have no intentions of marrying my sister. And he was like, as a friend, you know, I consider you a good friend. I consider you actually one of my best friends. But at the end of the day, at least I know for the past few years where Berbrooke has been. I have no idea where you've been. And basically given your history going into brothels and the whole thing, and your whole anti-marriage stance, like, it's not personal. This is about family, and this is about me protecting my sister. And he walked away, and you kind of saw Simon. He stood there for a minute and thought about it for a second. And then there was another flashback. Simon was 4, and he was with the tutor. And his father walked in, and he was like, I don't understand. He's 4 years old and he's not talking. And so he was about to hit Simon with the brush to make him talk. And Simon turned around and said no. He said no very clearly, but you can see that he had a speech impediment. He was having a difficult time. He was intelligent. He just couldn't communicate as well as, you know, you would expect somebody at 4 years old to do. And so at this time, his father basically called him a twit. He said that the monarchy granted them that line, and the only way for them to maintain it is to be impeccable, and that he couldn't have basically an idiot inherit the title. And he basically told him at this 4-year-old that he was dead to him, that he didn't want anything else to do with him, because, you know, he just didn't take any time to work with Simon to help him develop. He just wrote him off like he was just garbage at that point to him, and basically treated him as such. So at the Featherington's house, you saw Marina. She had a bunch of letters. She's been in confinement at this point, so she can't basically leave the house until after, I guess, the baby is born or whatever, and they're going to decide what they're going to do after that. And so Penelope walked in and brought her some food. And so it seems like Penelope seems to be the more compassionate one out the family. And so she was like, you know, before we go to the party, I found these sweets and I just wanted to bring you the sweets. But she also had an ulterior motive, because knowing that Marina was pregnant, she was trying to figure out, like, well, what happened? How did it happen? And she kind of talked about, you know, she didn't talk about the actual sex part of it, but Penelope bought her a cake. And so she was like, well, how did it happen? And then she made a little joke saying cake. And so Penelope was eating the cake, and she was like, cake? And so then she went into the story about how, you know, where she came from. The vicar would do these hour-long sermons, and then, you know, she would be there starving. And then one day, it was like Sir George Crane's son would sneak her food, right? And so they developed a friendship, which of course progressed, and that's how she ended up pregnant. And he is now out of the country. I forget where she said he was, but he still writes to her. And so Penelope asked her, okay, so how was this condition brought on? And all Marina said was love. So the queen is reading the paper, and she is annoyed at the lack of matches. She thought that this season, with all the young girls and the suitable, you know, eligible guys, that it would be more weddings, more, you know, it'd be something. It would be more, and so she was actually quite disappointed. And so we go to flash to the Bridgerton's house, and the girls are all getting dressed and the whole thing. And next, you know, the footman walks in with a letter, or one of the maids walk in with a letter, and it's a letter from the queen inviting Lady Violet to tea. So of course they're all excited, like, oh, I wonder what that's about. Like, why would she, you know, invite us of all, you know, well, Lady Violet of all people? So maybe this is a good sign that something good is going to happen soon. So Simon escorts Lady Danbury to the ball. he has another flashback. So Simon was, with the tutor again, and Lady Danbury walked in because she wanted to check on him because she hadn't seen him, I guess, since he was born. And she was like, so you are still alive and the whole thing. And she was like, oh, you look so much like your mother, thank God. And she could tell that he wasn't, his social grace wasn't where they should be. And so when he tried to speak, she realized that, there was, he had this speech impediment. And she basically took him under her wing, and she did what she needed to do to encourage and support and, help him as best she could. And she said she wanted to do this because when he walked into a room, she basically wanted him to have this air about him that commands attention and respect. And he does. To be perfectly honest, when you see him walk into a room, like all eyes are on him. He has, under her tutelage, he has developed that. And you can also see why he has such an affinity and a lot of respect for her, because she mothered him. When his mother passed away, she was the woman who stepped in and not only gave him the attention and the care and the compassion that he needed, she also gave him the support and the encouragement that he needed in order for him to be, the man that you see today. Now, does that mean that he doesn't come with such problems? I mean, it also gives you some insight onto why he's such a philanderer. But for the most part, you can kind of see why he is so close to Lady Danbury. And then, he really don't argue with her too much. Basically, if she asks him to do something, he just, he just do it, right? So, they're at the ball, and Lady Danbury and Simon arrive. And then shortly after, Anthony and Daphne arrive. And so Simon walks over to Daphne and asks her to dance, much to Anthony's chagrin. So he's like, his face is all tied up, and you can clearly see that he's pissed. So Simon and Daphne are on the floor, and she was telling him that she needs him to go to all 8 balls with him, and then the picnic and the whole thing, and they really need to make this look real in order for little Berbrooke to get off her back. And she said, they, still this whole pretense, we need to at least pretend like we're enjoying ourselves. And so they had this great dance. And of course, all eyes were on them. And you kind of see Berbrooke standing off to the side, and he is not happy at all, right? So Anthony, when, Simon and Daphne separated, Anthony told Benedict, one of the brothers, to go over and dance with Daphne. And he was like, why? He was like, because I asked you to. He didn't want to, but he wanted to keep Daphne occupied because he wanted to talk to Simon. So he followed Simon over to the area to get a drink, and he wanted to basically restate his point that he doesn't want Simon involved with his sister because Simon's past, and he knows that at this point that Simon doesn't want to be married, and it is important to his sister and to their family that she actually find a good match. Of course, so hot on their heels, Berbrooke walks up to make his point that he's the better man, and the whole thing, and how you promised, and Anthony's trying to reassure him that everything is fine, that he's going to take care of things. And of course, Simon is making his little quips like, did he ever tell you why he got that black eye? And this is when Simon tells him that he basically took liberties with your sister, and Daphne punched him. And Anthony was like, he kind of looked over at Daphne, who was, further away. She couldn't hear the conversation. She could see something was going on. You could tell she was watching while she was dancing with Benedict, but obviously she couldn't hear what was said. And so Anthony was like, well, no, if that happened, she would have told me. And Simon said, would she? Well, do you think she would have? Do you really think that she would have told you? And he thought about it for a minute, and then he told Berbrooke, don't ever talk to my sister again. If you ever talk to my sister again, that is going to happen. Nothing good, right? So now Berbrooke is pissed because he's had his heart set on marrying Bridgerton, namely Daphne. Okay. So, Anthony told, so as Berbrooke walked away, Anthony walked over to, they kind of met in the middle, and Daphne wanted to know, okay, what is going on? Anthony tells her, you don't have to worry about Berbrooke again. He won't be bothering you again. And so Anthony walked off, and then Daphne walked over to talk to Simon. And Simon ended up telling her that he eventually told Anthony what happened. And she got upset because she was like, I can speak for myself. And you underestimate the entitlement of Berbrooke. And I think that you may have made things worse. And now everybody is staring. And they were. And she walked off. And so after the party, Simon, after Lady Danbury went to the house, Simon decided he was going to go for a walk. Berbrooke appeared. And he started talking about how Simon doesn't need Daphne. He's already a duke. He already has the money and the title and all that. And that Berbrooke, he's saying that he needs her, I guess, their wealth and their name, their prestige. And so for him, it's not that he doesn't, obviously she is like a trophy. It's not like he loves her, and I very seriously doubt that he's going to actually treat her right. He wants her for the names and the name and the connection and the wealth that her family has. That is the whole point, Berbrooke's point. That's why he's pressing so hard for this union. And he was like, so if you are so interested in her, why haven't you proposed to her yet? Why haven't you married her yet? Unless you've already had her. And so that upset Simon because he was questioning Daphne's honor and basically told him that was a mistake and you need to get your mind right and don't ever do that again. And he apologized. And then he started talking about Simon's father and started talking about how everybody knows how Simon's father was and how desperate he wanted a son. And, it seems like when it came to your father, you were able to overlook certain transgressions, something he said, and it set Simon off, and Simon ended up beating the crap out of Berbrooke. And I can't say that he didn't deserve it. He was just a jerk. Okay, so Simon has another flashback. So it's been, I think, a couple of years, and Lord Hastings, he's in his office working on some paperwork. And the footman walks in and he said that Lady Hastings and Lord Bassett was there. Lord Bassett being Simon. And he was basically like, this is an unpleasant surprise. And so Simon stood, there, and he, spoke, and it seemed like, it was there was a drastic improvement in his speech. But, he was still a work in progress, but at the same time, he was still a kid. He was probably like, I don't know, maybe 6, 7 years old at this point. And his father basically, shitted on him. Basically told him that he was just helpless, that he was going to, ruin, that he, regretted the fact that he's going to inherit the title. He still saw him as an imbecile and a nitwit. And then he told him that you are as useless as your mother was. This woman who went through all that pain to bring him into this world for you to treat like shit. And he just basically, and that he going to do what he did with his mother, which is forget that she ever sullied the walls of his manor or whatever, some crap he said to him. And so Lady Danbury was like, I beg your pardon. He said that the only thing that he said to Lady Danbury, you're overstepping. The only thing you need to do is shut your bitch mouth. Or something he said to her. I'm like, they really worked to paint his father as a piece of crap. And they did a really good job. Because he just went eight-ish, okay? And so now everybody's at the picnic. And Eloise and Penelope are talking. And Eloise is asking her, okay, so what did you find out? And she said that, the condition was a result of love. And she was like, well, Penelope is like, that doesn't make any sense because I guess she was saying her parents loved each other and they only had 3 kids. And she, I mean, clearly understands that there's no connection between love and pregnancy, but they still don't really know the intricacies of it. So they kind of went off talking like young girls do about what, you know, could have been. So Daphne she's sitting and she's waiting for Simon to arrive, but Anthony saw her and he told her that, and then he has the nerve to say, you should have told me what happened between you and Berbrooke. She was like, well, would you have listened to me? I didn't think that you would believe me. He was like, do you think so little of me? And she said, well, I told you several times that I didn't want to marry the man and you didn't want to hear it. So yes. And at that time she saw Simon and she just got up and walked away and he was just sitting there with the stuck face like, well, yeah, I mean, it wasn't a whole lot he could argue about because it was true. Like she was telling you that she didn't want to marry the man and you didn't care to hear it because it was against what you wanted. And so then turn around and tell her that she should have just told you, acting like that would have made any difference in the world, was a bit ridiculous. Anthony. Okay, so Simon arrives, and of course they're still negotiating what the terms and the number of balls and the whole thing. Berbrooke arrives, and he has this paper, and you can see he was black and blue. His face was all just a hot mess. And so he walks over to the Bridgerton's family with this paper, basically saying that he has secured his permission to marry Daphne, and that if they don't allow them to marry, that he's going to spread the lie that she meets with men alone. Because, she didn't meet with him alone. She was alone and he showed up. But in that time, nobody would have cared. They would have only cared that she was alone with a man. And they know that would scandalize her and the family and make her being able to get a good match impossible. And so now they have now been backed into a corner, and she has reluctantly decided to marry Berbrooke because she doesn't want her family dragged through the mud. And so obviously it's just a crappy situation. So they get home, and Lady Violet is in Daphne's room and they're talking, and she was telling her that, marriage is supposed to be about love, well, not necessarily love, but companionship and having somebody there to support you. And she was like, you usually find your joy in other things, namely your children. And, basically that's what she was saying, that, a lot of women find joy in their children, even though, their marriages, their partner may not be the person that they wanted. They find other ways to find joy in their marriage and their lives by focusing on other things. And, Daphne, and, she said that I always wanted the kind of marriage that you and Dad had. She always talked about their marriage, her parents' marriage, and how much they seemed to love each other. And that's what she wanted. And, she kind of cried a little bit because she realized that, well, they both did, because they realized that she's not going to have that with Berbrooke. It's a business, this is going to be like a business arrangement kind of marriage. He's not going to love her. She's not going to love him. And it is mainly so that the Berbrooks can elevate in society. That's just basically the reason for the marriage. And so, Eloise is outside smoking a cigarette. And next thing you know, she heard her name called, and she turned around, and it's Benedict. And she thought that he was about to lay into her for smoking, but he just asked for a cigarette himself. And they sat and talked, and you can see Eloise really pondering this idea of marriage and childbearing, and if that's something that she really wants, and she really see herself as doing something else. She wants to go to college. She wants to get educated. She really just see her joy being in other things other than being somebody's wife and somebody's mother. And she just wants something different. And Benedict, said that he agreed, he does too. He wants something different. And what that different is, he really didn't go into detail about, but I think it was just them understanding each other. He understands where she's coming from. So Simon is, he's back in the ring boxing, and He's saying that his sparring partner is saying that, oh, so you must be happy that you're off the hook now that she is, it's been announced that it's official that she's going to be marrying Berbrooke. And you can kind of tell that, you would have expected him to be a lot happier, but he wasn't. Go figure. So, Lady Violet, actually, it's now time today for her to have her tea with the Queen, and she sat down with the Queen and they talked a little bit, and she's like, I'm usually not wrong about these things when I make my predictions. And she was talking about how she had high hopes for Daphne, and I guess at this point she's heard about the goings on with the Berbrooks and the Bridgertons, and she said without saying, right? So while they were talking, one of her servants, she actually did some snuff, right? And she asked one of the servants to go and get her some more. And then when the person left, she was like, oh, he's a terrible gossip. Servants, he talks a lot. If you say anything, it'll be all over town. So he came back and gave her the snuff, and he went over to stand next to one of her maids, and and the Queen started talking about Mozart and something like that, and she can gather she was saying without saying that servants talk, and if you get yourself in the right situation, you might be able to find out some information. And so as they were leaving, Lady Violet told her maid, we need to invite the Barringtons over for tea. Okay. So while Lady Violet and Lady Berbrooke, I keep Barrington Lord, Berbrooke, is having tea, Berbrooke's servant is in the kitchen of the Bridgerton home with, obviously, Lady Violet's servants, and they get to talking. And what they find out is that Berbrooke has this illegitimate child that he had with the servant that he had sent away, and he hasn't sent a penny to support. And they knew that it only took, they tell a few people, and it's like telephone. By the time the message get back around, they've added things, taken things away, it's a whole thing. But then by the time they got to Mrs. Whistledown and it was published, it was all over town, and everybody knew. And that is basically how they successfully got rid of Berbrooke because of the scandal. It forced him to leave town, and basically I think he ended up having to support the child. Like, he was shamed into supporting this woman and this child he had this baby with, right? So that actually sullied his reputation. So in the event that he made some comment about Daphne at this point, it would just look like retaliation. It would be easy for them to refute. So he really didn't have a leg to stand on. Or, like I said, I'm just in episode 2, so we don't know how this is going to work out, because Daphne did say that when she was talking to Simon, you underestimate his sense of entitlement. So we could very well see a resurgence of the Berbrooks. Okay, so it got around town, and he eventually left town. And so later that night, Anthony walked in. Lady Violet was in the drawing room, and she was doing some kind of embroidery. And Anthony walked in, and he said that Berbrooke had left town, told her that Berbrooke had left town, and that, next time he would be more careful. And she basically told him that where Daphne is concerned, that she is perfectly capable of handling things. And that she was making that embroidery for Daphne, and she was like, well, I could, she wanted to make one for his wife as well. And he kind of got to hint, like, maybe if you focus less on Daphne and focus more on you getting a suitable partner, which at this point is more important because he's the oldest, he has the title, so they need him to marry and have a child, preferably a son. So that was basically the gist of that, and he walked away. She's basically like, I got this when it comes to Daphne, because you keep mucking up. So, Miriam, she was in her room and she was writing a letter, and the servant just barged in, didn't knock. I guess they feel like they didn't have to, and so you saw her stick the letter in the desk, and so the servant left some food on the table by the door, and Miriam said, "Am I to be confined here forever?" And the servant basically said that no one's to blame for your confinement but you, and she walked out. And so I wonder if they made it a point to show her sticking that letter in the drawer. I hope she was smart enough to hide those other letters. And I hope that Penelope doesn't say anything about those letters, because I feel like that's going to come out and it's going to create an issue. Back at the Bridgerton's house, Eloise and Daphne. So Daphne is getting ready for another party, and Eloise walked in, and you could see Eloise, they talked, and you can see that Eloise is traumatized, because she was saying how when her mom, I think when their father passed away, her mom was pregnant with Hyacinth, the youngest. I believe that's the youngest. I thought the big Gregory was the youngest, but maybe it's Hyacinth. And how the labor was so terrible, they actually thought that they were going to lose their mother. And that apparently traumatized Eloise, and she just, at the thought of that, it really frightened her. And she asked Daphne if she was afraid. And Daphne was like, well, initially she said no, but then she said, I do have some fears, but I do know that basically, with the bad in the world, there's also a lot of good. And I think that we should focus on that. And Eloise felt like that wasn't a real response. She was basically like, don't you ever get tired of pretending to have it all together? And she got up and walked out, and Daphne was kind of left sitting there thinking like, do I? Like, is everything a show? Was like everything pop and circumstance? And I mean, at this time it is. I mean, everything is about appearance. People are not interested in the truth. They are interested in what they see and hear. It's not about truth. And so Simon and Daphne, they walk in, they arrive to the party, of course, and they, they're dancing, and she started talking about, her expectations, and they were happy that Berbrooke was out of the way, but she's saying that she still has to find a partner, and she needs to find a husband, and she wants to get married, and she wants to have a family. And she was like, this is not about the pretense or the game anymore. She was like, this is about my life and me taking control of my life. And I want to find a husband, and I want to have a family. You can kind of tell that Simon is, Simon, the way that they dance and the way that they look at each other, you can tell that it's more. But he was like, so then let's find you a husband. And so they separate on the dance floor, and he stands to the side, and he watches out. Another man walks over and asks her to dance, and she obliges. And while he was standing on the side watching her, Lady Danbury walked over and says to him that you guys make a captivating couple. And she saw his facial expression, and she was like, well, whatever is the matter? And he basically said nothing. And then he has the final flashback where Lord Hastings, his father, is on his deathbed, basically. And Simon walks in, and the father stretches out his hand. It's like, come closer, my son, and the whole thing. And, my heart may be weak, but I'm glad that, I'm so proud that our family name rests with you and the whole thing. And he basically leaned over and told his father that this is the only vow that I'm ever going to make, that I will never marry, that I will never have any children, and that the family line is going to end with me. And you saw his father started gasping and croaking and all kind of stuff. And he was telling him, speak, you evil bastard, or something he said. Because that's how his father spoke to him when he stuttered and stammered. So he was like, speak, he antagonizing him. And then his father died. And that was the last interaction he had with his dad, and that is how the episode ended. And so, you know, you get the feeling that it's not so much that he doesn't want these things. I think that his whole thing is to spite his father. And he doesn't want the family. I think he wants the family to continue, but at the same time, his hatred for his father is a lot stronger for his need to reproduce. I guess that's the only way to say it. So again, a very good show, a very good episode. Again, I'm going to keep watching. Sometimes I wish that I could. It gets very difficult, especially when you have a good show that you like watching, to watch and do reviews, because you just want to be able to sit and enjoy the show. But I'm going to get through these. I think it's 8 episodes, so we're going to get through these as quickly as possible. I'm going to try to make these videos as short as I possibly can, but there are so many people, so many moving parts, so many different storylines, new characters being introduced. It's a lot. So I'm going to end this here, and I will talk to you guys later.